Last season for GT4s was absolutely insane, boasting a last race championship deciding move that seemed almost impossible. Could we see very much the same thing this season, just on a grander scale? We'll have to find out. Hello, everybody. I'm Jesse Lee, joined by Tim Peck, and behind the cameras, Jake the Bosmeister Boswell. And we're back with you again for another season of GT4 racing. And Tim Peck, before we get into anything else, I feel like this series has been the one that's been off the air the longest. We wrapped in early December. It's late January. We are back. Welcome back.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be back here. You're right, it's felt like absolutely ages since we've been here with these GT4s. There was a small series that was run. It was a bit of a mix-up series that was run over the winter where you had certain cars you had to pick, but of course that wasn't broadcasted in the end. But I'm very excited to be back here today, Jesse Lee, and I cannot wait to see how this season turns out.
Well, that season, I would like to say, oh, I don't want to talk about that, but I got a couple of podiums in that series, so I do want to talk about that. Not to toot my own horn, but it was nice to be able to get in the race car. So I've come back this season with quite a bit more GT4 knowledge than I had before. But something you noticed in the pre-race is when we brought this up at the beginning of the previous season is we take an early look at all the different cars here. We've got a couple of Chevrolets. We've got more Chevrolets than we had last season, a ton of Porsches, and also a nice smattering of Ginettas.
It is certainly an unusual sight. If you gave me money to guess who the most likely picked car was going to be this season, I would never have said the Ginetta. But that being said, last season we had two Ginettas in the mix and both of them did exceedingly well, actually getting promoted from AM up into silver. So if there's a car to gamble on, it's probably this one this season. We've seen a lot of people improving in it, and all round it's just a very fun car to drive. What I am surprised about though, Jesse Lee, is that we've gone from season 4 and having basically the entire grid as BMWs to, well, I can only see one there and it's currently in third.
One thing that hasn't changed, a couple of brave souls have picked the Ginetta, but as we saw in the previous two seasons, at some tracks, the Ginetta was nigh on unbeatable. So we'll have to see for a dark horse pick if the Alpine rather has what it takes to get it done here. Well, let's get you right into the action as practice ends and address the elephant in the room. Yes, we have all the cars in the same race, basically. I think there's a maximum of 50 cars or so that can be on the track, and we are at Misano in Italy. It's not the biggest track in the world, Tim.
It's not, but what it does have is a lot of long straights for the cars to just sort of arrange themselves when they're fighting for the room there. But it will be interesting to see how they handle themselves on a couple of the corners. You've, of course, got the two towards the end where you're basically going full throttle through them for the most part. So it'll be interesting to see what happens there. And I imagine there's going to be a lot of chaos today. So let's just hope that if you're in the race today, you want to hope that you can keep out of that.
A couple of other things to mention before we get started with qualifying. Here is the format all season long. A 50-minute practice session that is just now wrapping up. 10 minutes of qualifying. So very crucial. We'll come back to that in two 20-minute races. Qualifying sets your starting order for both races. We haven't seen that in a season. Of course, the previous season, season 5, we were doing one single hour race a week. Now they're doing two 20-minute sprints again. How insane. The last time that we did sprint races, 20-minute sprint races, all I can think about is how crazy Snetterton was. I think you and I both lost our voices for that race. But going back to qualifying really quick, Tim, qualifying, so many cars. We can have 50. I don't know actually how many we have, but I know we can have up to 50. But it's such a small track, 10 minutes of quali, everybody out there at the same time. Is it even possible to find an open stretch of tarmac to set a good lap?
I think it's definitely going to be a struggle. Of course, you've got the two main places you're going to find it. You either want to be out of the box first and onto the track, so you've got that nice long stretch ahead of you. But then again, you've not got a lot off to go with there, and you are leading the main pack. But you can also opt into coming out last, and then you're a bit more in control of what happens behind you. You can back yourself up really far, give yourself some distance. But I think it's just going to be a bit of a gamble. And I mean, looking at this, it's the first race. Everyone's going to be trying different strategies. I'm interested to see what happens. I think there is going to be a lot of fighting for positions, and I wouldn't be surprised if a couple of people got a bit tangled with each other during this qualifying session.
Well, qualifying underway. You have 10 minutes. 30 seconds of that have already come and gone. And it looks like everybody's split up into two classes here. The white number background denoting pro, and the red background, which normally means am, but I'm not sure if Night Owl is anything to go by, if those are actually am cars. Matter of fact, I'm pretty sure those aren't supposed to be am cars, so we will see how that all shakes out. If Tom Bryant or somebody else could tell me what that is from the admin side of the racing, that would be great at some point. But otherwise, all the cars out on the track at the same time, qualifying for the first time. Well, we have seen the two sprint races before, but we have not seen sprint racing with this many cars. Tim's already reacting, and so am I, as that looked ominous coming down the straight.
That looked very ominous. There were a lot of cars weaving in and out there, so it's going to be very exciting to see how this turns out. Currently, we have Tom Bryant out in front, so he is going to have, I'd say, the optimal position right now. He can dictate what pace he goes. The people behind him are the ones that are going to have to worry a bit. If Tom messes up here, then they're going to be basically right there. But we're coming over the line now. Tom's gone through. We're just looking at some of the other drivers, and it looks like most of them are backing themselves up a little bit. You can see just on that final set of corners, everyone's going white, with their little dots going white, which means they are being recorded as a slow car. So clearly everyone's just trying to grab that tiny extra bit of space, which is going to be crucial if they want to get in a fast lap here.
That's very well spotted. You can see the, what would you say that is, almost turquoise colored cars. That's cars that have invalidated a lap or are not currently on a quick lap. And they turn yellow when they go very slowly. And Tim Peck picked up on that immediately. They turn gray when they're on a quick lap. And of course, the car that's red is the car that we're riding on board with currently, on board with the HWT Motorsport driver of Tom Bryant. He had to pass one of those cars that had just come out of pit road. They got out of the way there. That was an absolute luxury, and definitely worth some brownie points with Tom Bryant, surely, after being let through by, I believe that's the 17 or the 37 car.
Yeah, I think it's one of the calls I was talking about. You've got to decide when you want to come out, and they clearly decided they wanted to come out a lot later than everyone else. I think maybe there's a bit of misjudgment in there, or maybe they were just forced into coming out literally right in front of Tom Bryant, because personally I'd have come out a little bit sooner. But again, a lot of cars opted into not coming out straight away, and because of that they've all fallen back a little bit more. And you can actually see on the mini map now there's a lot of turquoise dotted in between those grey cars. So did Tom just go wide and invalidate his lap there? Because that is not going to be ideal. He's going to have to go for yet another lap, and it looks like that was maybe invalid. Yes, that was an invalid lap that Tom did there, so he will have to set another one. But the first sets of cars are coming through now, and we will see who's benefited. Honestly, Jesse Lee, I'm thinking right now, you probably just want to get in a banker lap, because this might be the fastest lap you get if it's your first chance. I'm not sure how much people are going to be able to improve, because they're just going to keep getting bunched back together lap after lap.
Well, Andy Boardman for Greased Weasel, he came in the quickest, but was almost immediately overtaken by Christoph Verstappen, and then towards Zidlow came in and took the top spot there. And as far as I can tell, throughout this massive grid, he's still the quickest as a bunch of cars come in. I think DeBont is on the provisional pole of the silver or AM class. I'm not sure how they're qualified, to be completely fair with you. But towards Zidlow is the quickest car, a 42.240, the mark to beat. Quite frankly, no one else even really close. Verstappen the closest, and he's more than 0.3 off.
One thing I wanted to mention is we have a lot of new faces here, and a lot of them have also been performing very, very well. Currently we're watching Wingham. He's down the bottom, but he hasn't set a lap yet, I believe. So we'll see what they manage to do. They're coming through the final corner here, and I believe they're going to be setting their time. So we'll see where they place themselves compared to the rest of the grid. It looks like this one kind of the inside, so actually they're probably not on a fast lap, and they're going to put themselves in 28. So yeah, I think they probably backed out of that lap towards the end there.
Could have well have done, and it's pretty crazy. You've got nearly 30 cars that have done a lap, and still a third of the field have yet to set a quick lap. Look at the track map on the right side of the screen. It's Adalbert Gertan is going to come across the line, qualify provisional fourth with a 43.037. But look at the map on the right side of your screen. About a third of the cars on the racetrack are blue, meaning that, again, they've either just come out of pit road or they've invalidated their lap that they're currently on, and that tells you just how difficult it is. We saw Tom Bryan, who had completely clean air, run off the racetrack trying to get everything they possibly can. I can tell you from recent experience, these cars understeer very mightily. I think the Titanic cornered about as good as some of these GT4s.
It's not just about making sure you stay on the track as well. Of course, if the person directly ahead of you goes just a little bit wide, that can ruin your entire lap as well. So it's all about just finding that extra bit of space so that you're only influencing your own lap. But as you just said, Jesse Lee, you also have to make sure you're perfecting the lap yourself. So there's a tiny margin in there where you can get that perfect lap in. And I think that's why we're starting to see some people struggle now, because as you said, there are so many turquoise cars still on the track, and that means that they've either invalidated their lap or they've just come out of the pits again. So we'll see whether they can slot themselves in. I'm surprised to see, actually, there's still a lot of cars who have not set the lap that they've wanted to. They're just sort of dotted around the bottom, maybe 3 or 4 seconds behind the pack, and I imagine most of those is they were doing a really good lap, maybe ran into someone or just got a little bit too close to someone in the final set of corners and had to abort. And I think that is going to be the real struggle for a lot of people, especially as we go on to future races. I wouldn't be surprised if the people who come out with the most points in this race struggle in the next quali, just because it's going to be a case of who can find the space and when.
Took the words right out of my mouth. That's actually going to be my next point. It's very much a struggle out there because of the track just being ram-packed. I can't think of a single other time. Actually, I take that back. I can think of a single time where I saw this many cars on this racetrack. Ryan Gill and I called that race, and I believe it was a race at night, and it was very thrilling up front, but lap traffic came into play early and often, but it was a very fun race. That was about a year or so ago, so it's been quite a long time. Only 2 minutes left of qualifying. Everyone trying to get a better lap. Rob Franken had a better lap the last time by, a 44.235, and that got him up with his class at least in the number 9 Audi for stellar performance. But I think this lap's going to be a little bit better than the previous one as well, and it is up to 13th place. Incremental improvements from the number 9 Franken, and that's pretty much what you can't really hope for more than that. Towards Zidlow is still the quickest with a 42.240, and still without a challenge up front. Andy Boardman in 3rd place, mind you, half a second off. And if Towards Zidlow can do that in the race, Tim, it's going to be a very long 20 minutes for everybody else.
It certainly is. I can't see him at all because there are too many cars on the track right now to be able to tell this. But I'm trying to work out where Verstappen is. It looks like they're just coming around the final corner now. So it looks like they've kind of backed up a little bit as well. And I'm going to be honest, Jesse, I don't know if they're going to have the space to improve. They've got to find an extra 4 tenths in there, basically, and they don't have a lot of room to do it. Although one thing that I haven't mentioned yet is, if you are behind someone, you might get lucky. That's a lot of slipstream that you're going to get from the person ahead. And on a track like Misano, where you've got a lot of long straights, slipstream is absolutely going to help you improve your quality time. The only problem is at some point, one of you is going to have to go through the corner at the same time as the other. And I don't think anyone here is going to be too helpful to someone they might have to face later on. So Verstappen, if he wants to get through, he will have to do it on the track. And actually, he's just gone into the pits anyway. So it looks like he will start in 2nd place. But the rest of the track is still very, very busy right now, and there's a lot of people left to finish qualifying. It looks like we've basically got an entire lap left to see, and we're just going to have to watch where people start to place. I imagine it's going to be very, very jumbly in a minute, Jesse.
Conrad Jackson coming to the line here. This looks like a promising lap. How far up could they get with this lap? Carbon Sim Sport driver goes to fifth, a 42.897 as far as I could tell. Good enough for fifth place. Tom Bryant, by the way, did eventually get a lap good enough for the top 10, in fact. And Vasiliev in the number 11 ends his qualifying run in 14th place. As everybody looking to improve here near the end. Billy Octane driving for Triple R. I just want to race 33 in a Porsche nonetheless. His last attempt. This could be a top 10 lap if he can get it to the line. I think he might just do it, and in fact it is just for a split second, a top 10 lap, and the number 8 Porsche outdoing him for that top 10 stop, bumping him down one position. A couple of cars still yet to cross the line. Qualifying's been over for a minute and a half, and we're still finishing qualifying.
Yeah, there's just so many cars on the track right now. We're going to see if Kingston Lee can put themselves up a couple of places. They're currently in 9th, and it looks like they've got an improvement going, so they might be able to slot themselves up a little bit higher in this order, and we're going to watch them cross the line now. Never mind, it looks like the lap was disallowed, so that looks like it's going to be the grid for the race. Currently, we have Tord Zidlo leading the pack. He's on pole. Verstappen will be in second, and Boardman will be in third. So 3 veteran names, I'd say, there. We've had them for the past 3 seasons, and I'm sure they're going to continue fighting out to see which one of them will be in the top spot.
Well, there you have it. Tord Zidlo and Verstappen, your top 2 qualifying results confirmed. And while we wait for them to grid up for the first of 2 20-minute races, I think it's about time to welcome in the other part of our broadcast family. You in chat, welcome back to season 6 of GT4. Tim and I were very excited to get going here today. Matter of fact, we were exchanging texts early this morning. It was early this morning for me anyway, Tim, but beside the point. I just thought about that. It's probably afternoon for you, but it was early in the morning for me.
It was early afternoon, I'll give you that.
Absolutely ecstatic about this. You guys might not understand. Tim and I love this kind of racing. We love everything about it. The close quarters, the unpredictableness, and also the craziness. There's a lot of nesses in there, and I think that craziness is what you're going to see here today. Tim Peck, your thoughts?
I think I have to agree with you there. The GT4s are always so fun to watch. I don't know what it is about them, but it just feels like the second everyone gets in the GT4, they're that little bit more brutal. And the amount of times we have watched some very close racing where cars have been almost touching, full on touching, and just the chaos is immense in these GT4 races. I'm very excited to see what happens. And personally, if you'd have asked me, let's say a couple of seasons ago, whether I like Misano as a track, I'd have been like, it's alright, it's not my favourite, but, you know, it's a fairly average track. Having raced it a couple of times recently, I love Misano, and if there is anywhere where we are going to see some GT4 chaos, it is going to be here. You've got straights, you've got kinks in the straights, and you've got some very tight corners to deal with. That's going to be absolutely brutal, and as you said, with a 50-car grid, there's going to be a lot of fighting for just that little bit of room on the track.
It sure is. A lot of nervous racing drivers, especially if you're right around 20 to 25th place, meaning you are smack dab in the middle of this field. The turn 1-2 complex here at Misano is really difficult because if you are stuck side by side, you and I have both seen a lot of times that will lead to contact even when you're just with a single other car. It's such a tricky and difficult set of corners to get through. And all of the 90-degree corners on this racetrack invites contact as well because, well, if you're going down the inside trying to make a move, a lot of the time you don't allow yourself the space necessary to get the pass done. There's contact, and it can be just a bit messy. Some other things, of course, to keep in mind today, the same thing throughout the entire season. We'll say it every single week. No pit stop required in this race. It's a straight up 20-minute fight for the win in both of the classes, and no live stewarding on Thursdays, as is the norm. And I don't blame them. I wouldn't want to live steward this many cars here anyway. That would be an absolute nightmare.
You would need a lot of eyes to be able to steward this. There are a lot of cars on track, and not to look too far into the future and give too much away, but Jesse, we are at Monza next week, and we all know how Monza starts. And Misano, it's not so much different. You've got that chicane in the beginning, those two corners, very difficult to navigate, and when there's this many cars on the track, I mean, it's like you said, I feel very sorry for the people starting in the middle, because I'm not sure how much influence they're going to have over where they are. It's basically just going to be, well, keep your eyes open. Don't close your eyes, but keep your eyes open and pray that you get the room you need. But that being said, we've had a couple of mishaps here in this GT4 Championship, but for the most part, I'd say all very, very sensible drivers and do give each other plenty of room. Of course, that is when they are not racing. I'm wondering that someone has just stopped on the line and, oh, it looks like they've disconnected. I was wondering if that was going to be some really wacky tactic there where they were going to stop on the line, do an extra lap. No. But yeah, we're out on the out lap right now. Towards Idlo leading the grid to the start-finish straight. And, well, we will see what happens. They've got to do quite a long way around Misano, so they've got a bit of weaving and braking to do before they get there. But, Jesse, I ask you this every single race. Just out of the blue, who do you think is going to come out on top today?
I don't think if Zidlow can repeat what he had done in qualifying, I just don't see anybody catching the 373 here today. The only thing I can think of that would keep Zidlow out of the top step of the podium today would be a contact with a back marker, really. But other than that, I just don't see it happening for anybody else. By the way, a shout out to Ellis, who qualified on pole in the lower class in the 228. Watton and Olsen, the top three for that class as well. A very well done to them as we try to cover all of the racing, not just the racing at the front of the field. And qualifying ended so abruptly. I didn't get to see the car. Well, there's so many cars, I couldn't see the cars in the second class. Keep in mind, everyone's racing for their own championship. The white numbered cars and the red numbered cars fighting for two different championships here today. And before we get going, like Tim said, we did have one car teleport to pit lane. That's likely connection based. And also, welcome to all of you in chat. I noticed we had some of the drivers in chat. A little bit of Katy Perry action in there as well, hot and cold depictions of how that qualifying went. But on top of that, of course, a big welcome back to Carlos Colladian, who apparently is a huge GT4 fan. Carlos, welcome back to GT4. 40-plus cars on the front straight at Misano, getting ready to go. The green flag is out, and even though they don't appear to be pulling off because they're GT4s, I promise you they are. Thundering down into turn one, the outside of Verstappen, side by side. He may have the move done here. They're still side by side towards Zidlow, fighting back. He's going to have the inside. They're side by side for second. Boardman and de Havilland. They're still 2 by 2 for the front two rows. Everybody else has pretty much sorted it out, and down the inside towards Zidlow. Does he finally have it? Yes, he does. And so does Boardman for third place. Completely off the racetrack. And off the racetrack up the inside is that Boardman who just took the lead. A block as well from the big Chevrolet. 3 wide as they go into turn 5 and 6.
Oh, that was... Verstappen looked like he had it for so long there, but Toslo's done such a good job holding him off, and it looks like he's going to get spun again. Imagine to hold on despite all of this chaos happening behind him. Towards Zidlow has fallen through the pack. They started out on pole position and just through no fault of their own have found themselves in the mid-pack now, so they've got a lot of climbing to do. Jesse Lee, you said they need to keep up the pace they had in qualifying. They need to find it now if they want to get anywhere near the front again. That was a very close set of first corners, and I mean, if you asked me before this race who was going to come out on top between towards Zidlo and Verstappen, I wouldn't know who to say. You have Verstappen, the Season 4 champion, going up against towards Zidlo, who has time and time again put in those fast laps and these great defences. And they were both always going to be brutal with each other. And for the most part, it was absolutely amazing. Verstappen just unfortunately clipped his tail at the end there, but we are still going. Right now we're watching Billy Octane, who has managed to put themselves up a few places as they come on to the start finish straight yet again. That is one lap down, everybody, and here is your current order. Boardman has taken the lead of this race in the Alpine. We've got the number 15 car, Kazmierski, in second, and then the Chevrolet made himself a comeback. De Havilland is in third place. Those are your current people sitting on the podium, but Jesse Lee, there is still 17 more minutes left to fight.
If you would have told me at the end of lap 1, Andy Boardman would be leading Kazmierski, and you'd have de Havilland and Jackson in the top 4, I would have said, well, you're clearly forgetting towards Zidlo is in this race, and so is Verstappen, but an absolute nightmare of a start. It's not the first time, let's be completely honest, we've seen towards Zidlo have a pretty bad start to a race. Of course, it took towards Zidlo, I think, a little while before he got his first win in RCI competition, because it just seemed like bad luck favored the driver of the 373. But again, if you were ever going to have a silver lining about being in the back half of the top 10, you got to know that you were 3/10 quicker than anybody else in quali, and you have to find a way to use that to get back on board here. Meanwhile, Kazmierski trying to go around the outside of Andy Boardman, can't quite get it done. That invites de Havilland up there for the fight. De Havilland has to back out, doesn't want to be on the outside. That's going to slow de Havilland up. Jackson's going to close in, so is Verstappen, and so is Kazmierski back on Boardman again.
There is a huge fight going on for first place right now. We saw 3 cars go through that corner together, but this is not the end of it. Number 57 is keeping up the chase. They fell back a little bit in that fight, but they are going to be still there just behind. Towards Zidlo, may have fallen back at the beginning, but has set the fastest lap of the race so far. That is the little purple square over the number 7 next to their name right now. Means they've set the fastest lap. And as you said, very fast in qualifying. So towards Zidlo, they're on their climbing game, and they are already up into 6th and looking back at Verstappen to get that place that they originally lost. Jesse, I absolutely do not think this is over. And right now, this could go any way between the top 6.
It really could. We are just a side-by-side race away from anybody taking the lead here. And in fact, already hitting what I presume to be lap traffic for the very first time. And the top 10 are going to have to work their way through that. And again, the top couple already getting that done. But just like you said, pretty much the entire top 7 or 8 cars, actually the top 10, in fact, now that I look back to Kingston Lee, who's still, I might be a bit biased, my favorite name in sim racing. He's in 10th place, but he's only about 2.5, 3 seconds behind this pack. And if these couple continue to race like Kazmierski is, then who knows? You could have a driver in the back half of the top 10 take the lead. Keep in mind, Kazmierski was running 3rd. He actually, the top 2 had him gapped a little bit, and he ended up coming through to take the lead because they were side by side for a few corners and perhaps took each other out. I never actually saw what happened to towards Zidlo that sent him off the track. I don't know if that was contact, and I don't know if you saw that, Tim.
Do you mean at the beginning, or do you mean literally just now?
No, at the beginning. What happened to towards Zidlo? I know he went off the track, but how?
They were coming round the, I think it was the 3rd corner, and Verstappen just was a little bit on the inside of him, and it was a light tap. There was nothing, neither one of them was in the wrong. They just turned in that little bit too much, and Verstappen's nose was just ducked behind the rear wheel. So Tortilla went really wide at the beginning there, which is why Verstappen then in turn slowed down, because I think they were intending to let them through, but it was a very tight bit of racing, as is happening right now as we look at Fjord fight their way up. They're currently fighting Vasiliev and Kingston Lee, so all very tight all round. I was going to say, Jesse, those 3 Porsches Verstappen towards Zidlo, and then Jackson behind. They need to have a barrier put between them. Those three have been absolutely battering each other for about 2 laps now. And
Here we
they're
go
not
again.
letting up any room. But here is the fight for first position. Boardman is going to have to defend here from Kazmierski. We'll see if they can do it. It looks like they've got the position they want on the track, and they have handled that corner very, very well. But if we know anything about these cars, is that BMW has such an advantage in the straight, especially where the Alpine doesn't. So we will see how this all turns out now, but for the most part, Boardman is remaining awfully calm for someone who has got 6 cars behind him trying to get into his position.
Kazimierski there has got just about the most horsepower down that straight. It's not really a straight. It has 2 dog legs in it, but it doesn't really matter because you can take it full speed. You can take it full speed in a GT3, let alone a GT4, so it's inconsequential. But the point is, the BMW has the top end that the Alpine doesn't. So at the end of that dog-legged back straight, every single time, Kazimierski has a shot on Boardman, and he's being respectful about it. He's going around the outside. If he can make that stick and pin Boardman down to the inside, I think it's doable. I really do think it's possible. By the way, also, Ellis leads Watton and DeBont in the lower class. Olsen didn't have a great start, and I believe Lowe was 3rd place a minute ago, but got a drive-through penalty, and that could only be due to track limits, though I'm not sure how in 8 minutes he got 3 track limit warnings and then a 4th one to get him a penalty. But alas, I believe that's exactly what happened, and that promoted DeBont up into 3rd in the lower class, and another successful defense by Boardman, but Kazimierski getting really acquainted with the back of that Alpine.
2 words for you on the drive-through penalty is turn 4. If there's any place you can cut the track here, it is absolutely turn 4. I know because I've been the victim to it so many times before in my life. Just, it's so hard to get that corner perfected, and the problem is if you just dip 2 wheels off the track, that's it. That's the warning through. As it looks like Kazmierski is going to go for the move around the outside of Boardman here. They will have the advantage on the inside of the next corner, and it looks like they've got it done. But again, they're now on the outside, and it looks like Boardman's just going to push himself back through. Amazing bit of defending from Boardman there. Had to stay totally come through that, and that has allowed the Chevrolet to put themselves in 2nd, which is really going to be a setback for Kazmierski and the BMW there. They've now got to get through a Chevrolet if they want another chance on Boardman there. So Boardman can now breathe a little bit.
I don't know if he can. De Havilland in that 57, which is my favorite number, by the way, Chevrolet. He's not no slouch down. There's going to be contact between De Havilland and Kazimierski, and more contact as the Porsches all cycle through, and it's all gone. Just a bit pear-shaped here. I feel like this was a day late and $1 short down the inside. Tim Peck, your thoughts? Do you think that corner should have been given there?
Oh, I don't know. We've watched it twice now and I still can't decide what's going to happen, but I will admit, when the BMW went for that lunge, there was a part of me that got really, really nervous very quickly. Honestly, I'm just glad that that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be. We have seen huge pile-ups before, and that accident, Jesse, happened in 2nd place. There are a lot of cars also trying to come through that corner there, and we did see one of the Porsches, I believe it's towards it though, actually there, did get tangled in it briefly, so it's very lucky for the rest of the grid that they managed to push their way through neatly. But in terms of who was in the wrong on just what was happening with that corner, I can't even begin to tell you. There was so much happening, and I do feel a bit sorry for the Chevrolet. That BMW did slightly appear out of nowhere, but they were neck and neck going through the corner. It's really hard to tell.
I would have to say, from a stewarding standpoint, and I'm pretty sure that will show up in a post-race report, I'm pretty sure the stewards are going to find that that was a bit ambitious of a move by the BMW there. And if that is protested by de Havilland, I think the stewards might see it their way. But you know what they say, there's a reason I'm in this box and not the other box. Well, for what reason today the other box doesn't exist. But this is a lot more fun. I like speculating more than having to watch my back when I go to the parking lot after the race. But I digress. I just feel like BMW tried to force a move in there, didn't quite come off, and wasn't fully alongside there. But we will see next week. Certainly something to talk about for the coming week. But I can tell you what that has done towards Zidlow, who was back in sixth place. He's second now.
He is second, and he will have his eyes on Boardman ahead, still setting the fastest laps out of
round two.
Anyone in the race. But it looks like, yeah, round two might be about to happen between the Chevrolet and, oh no, I think that's the Porsche in front actually that they are about to fight here. So it looks, oh, they've just shunted the Porsche.
It was round two.
It was round two.
Oh, he just turned him.
Oh, that is a proper shunt from behind. It looks like they've just missed their braking marker. The Porsche was a lot hot on the brakes than the Chevrolet was, and they've just absolutely shunted them, which has allowed the BMW, of all people, to benefit.
Of course. So, Zidlow's in the lead.
Zidlow's in the lead. In all of that, Zidlow's in the lead. Verstappen is in second. I was about to say, never mind, it's the Alpine that benefited. The Alpine hasn't. The Alpine was in the lead and has fallen all the way down to 16th, Jesse. What happened to Boardman there? We may have to have a little rewind soon to find out, but somewhere along the line, Boardman has just lost his position. I think Zidlow is going to be hoping that it was not his fault, because that might land a penalty.
All I'm going to say is I'm not sure why RCI provides us seats here in the booth, because we're not using them. I don't know what happened. I have no idea what happened to Andy Boardman. He basically went to the back of the pack. Might we see?
Oh, here we go.
This is a replay. This is a replay from earlier. This is the contact into turn 2. This is not what sent Andy Boardman. This is the that was the last contact replay we had between the 69. So we're forced to believe, because it didn't show up for us, that the 69 had a self-imposed accident. But what on earth could have happened to them that would have put them so far back? That would have had to have been a pretty mighty spin. Nonetheless, towards Zidlow, back out front. Verstappen still second. And by the way, they've reset to nil, and Verstappen is right behind the leader.
He is, and he is going to be ready to pounce. We've already seen them fight right at the beginning of the race, and now we're going to see them fight again. This time, though, with a lot more room to do it in. Porsche lock out for the podium right now. 373, 747, and 123 cars all in the top 3, and looking like they've given themselves a little bit of a gap to the Chevrolet behind. But honestly, Jesse, I'm focused on this fight right now. Kingston Lee started, I believe, in 10th and is now climbing their way up through the pack, with Vasiliev ahead of them, who also started a bit lower down than that and is climbing up. So you can see, with all the chaos happening up front, it's these cars that are around 10th place. They're the ones that benefit the most. Octane's also sneaked himself up into 10th as well, and they are still grouped up. There is a fight happening here, and if there's one thing I know about Matthew Kingston Lee, is that he is going to be ready to start fighting that number 11 McLaren ahead.
I've also noticed something has happened to Phil Roberts, who was in 11th place. They were right behind Billy Octane earlier, and they're not in the top 23. So something's happened to that pro car. And Tom Bryant now 11th, about a second and a half behind Octane, who is inside the top 10. But Matthew Kingston Lee trying to get by Vasiliev in the number 11 McLaren, to no avail down the front straightaway. But of course, the 8 Porsche behind is trying to get the toe, and that's all it takes around here. The straight's so long. Oh, it's going to be a big old slide for Matthew Kingston Lee, and an excellent save, and the best last name in racing.
They managed to catch that perfectly, and it's a good thing they did, because that is a very tight pack there that could have caused some accidents if they lost it. But Kingston Lee manages to catch it and will continue their pursuit on the McLaren ahead, as 4 cars now come through the final corner, basically together. All of them are trying to get that extra bit of advantage if they come up into turn 1 here. Will Kingston Lee make a move? Probably not. That would be a bit stretched there, but they are certainly going to be looking for it. You can see them. They're getting a little bit closer to Vasiliev every single second, and you don't know when they're going to strike. Although it looks like number 8 Porsche behind, they're starting to dip their nose into a bit. I think they fancy their chances of getting Kingston Lee.
After everything I've seen in this race so far, I'd fancy my chances of doing anything. We've seen cars go from the lead to eighth place, back to the front of this race. It's not an hour race, it's 20 minutes, and they did that all in the first 15 minutes or so. I forgot how chaotic these 20-minute race formats are. Billy Octane getting a little bit sideways there, trying to dig as much as they can off the corner. Anton Vasiliev here continuing to defend from Kingston Lee. I feel like Kingston Lee and the number 8 have a little bit more than Vasiliev, but the thing is, I think Vasiliev has just a little bit more down the straight, and that is the difference maker right now. You need to be quicker in the corners if you're faster down the straightaway most times.
It just gives you that extra bit of breathing room. And oh, it looks like it took a bit too much corner there. So Kingston Lee is going to be ready to pounce, but unfortunately they're not going to be able to benefit from that.
I am so glad we got this replay.
That is a slide and a half from the car behind. I believe that was the Porsche of Kingston Lee. Again, looking like they are sliding left, right, and center around the track there. I'm just going to turn my attention really quickly here because it looks like they're still fighting. I'm going to turn my attention really quickly to the front of the pack where Torzillo has built themselves a 1.5 second gap on Verstappen behind. So it looks like you are right, Jesse. They are going to just continue to keep up the pace. And if there's someone to be here, it is now Torzillo that people are going to be turning their eyes to in the second race. I would just like to remind everyone now that the second race format is decided by qualifying. So no matter where you finish here, as we watch Boardman climb up through Martins, but no matter where you finish in this race, you will go back to where you originally qualified. So a couple of people towards Zidlo mostly will be very happy about that. Also, Boardman will be happy to be back up in the pack. It looks like Kingston Lee is again having to fight Kozlowski behind for the number 8 position. Oh, it looks like now they're ready to go on Vasiliev. I don't know what's going to happen here, Jesse. They're still so close.
Vasiliev trying to defend on the inside. Kingston Lee desperate, trying to go around the outside. That's going to leave him vulnerable to the 8 on the inside. The 8 does come up the inside, and that's going to be game, set, and match, in my opinion, for the 8. No, it's not. I'm wrong, completely wrong. Kingston Lee somehow drove back around Adrian. How did he do that? I'm not sure in matched equipment, but he did. And he's sideways again as Kingston Lee. Who needs tires when the race is only 20 minutes long?
Kingston Lee either hasn't quite perfected the PSIs on those tires, or is just absolutely abusing them around every corner. As we see, Billy Octane goes for a lunge around the outside of Kozlowski there. He's not quite going to make it. Is going to manage to stay ahead of Brian behind, but Octane looking very daring as we get into the final minute of this race. Only 36 seconds left, and I believe, based on where we are on the track with the leader right now, this will be the last lap for a lot of these cars. So if you're going to make a move, you need to make it now. This is the last lap. Torzillo will cross the line after the timer hits 0 here. So for that big group of cars, starting in 7th, running all the way down to 11th, Jesse Lee, if they want to make a move, they have to do it this lap. And now that the first few corners are out of the way, they are very, very limited at where they can do it. So we are going to watch Kingston Lee now from the rear view of Vasiliev. We're going to see whether Kingston Lee decides that they're going to make that move. They are just that little bit too far back at the moment, but it looks like they've gone to optimize this corner as they go down the inside of the McLaren. And I think, Jesse Lee, Kingston Lee has made this stick now.
Oh! No, he sure hasn't. Vasiliev forces his way back to the inside. Kingston Lee saw and used what he learned from the previous lap to get that position. He might have just been moved out of the way. Kingston Lee is letting Kozlowski know that he's not going to let him have it again. Doesn't quite have the run he did a lap ago, and Kozlowski's going to get that position away, and here comes Octane. Octane's trying to get there, completely sideways again is Kingston Lee as he loses several positions towards Zidlo. Went from 1st to 6th, back to 1st, and he's going to win race 1 of season 6 in an epic race that nobody would have ever thought was possible. Adrian's going to have one last dive on Vasiliev, and it's not going to be quite enough as they're almost side by side, but Vasiliev holds in the final 15 to take 7th place. Verstappen 2nd, Jessen 3rd, Then I believe the 68 Chevrolet was fourth. And of course, Jamie Ellis, is going to lead flag to flag in their class and win that race. Watton second. Olsen comes back to finish third. Wow, what a race one. Welcome back to GT4.
Welcome back, everyone, and this is why we love the GT4s. They are so brutal with each other on track, and they always seem to be fighting. We had one season of endurance where it was an hour and 10-minute long race. There was the driver stop in the middle, and they were brutal with each other then. So now that we've switched it back to the 20-minute format, they are even more eager to get in there as quickly as possible. They have less time to put the car where they want it, and they are absolutely using up every second to fight for the position ahead. And that is what happens. You saw how quickly it can all fall apart. Kingston Lee looked like they were going to have the move on Vasiliev ahead of them. And it just all fell apart in the series of one corner. So if there's anything to take going into this next race, Jesse Lee, it's that you've got to be brutal, but you maybe just have to tone it back that little bit so that you don't lose everything in one go.
I'll tell you something else. Our excellent broadcaster, Jake Boswell, has the replay of what happened to Andy Boardman. Keep in mind, Boardman was leading the race and just absolutely lost it. Opposite locked the car out of a 90 left. We saw some cars do that in practice and quali. But just what an absolutely devastating way to lose a race here. And indeed, probably the reason that he lost. Opposite locked on the penultimate corner. And that is the loneliest feeling in motorsport.
That is going to stick with them, certainly for the next few races, but we are about to head into race 2. We've just got to take a little bit of time to reset the grid once more, back to where they were for
I need to lie down
positions.
is what I need.
Yeah, I tell you what, if the second race is half as exciting as the race we've just watched, we are all in for a treat. That was absolutely flawless and some brilliant driving all round. Boardman was in first until the unfortunate incident that we just watched there. Going to be looking to try and just get some more points in this next race. They definitely have what it takes to hold on to third here if they can just keep it together through those corners. Towards Zidler and Verstappen, I mean, you saw how aggressive they were with each other at the start, how hectic and fighting they were. We've got to watch that all over again, Jesse. I mean, we could have an exact repeat here. Towards Zidler could go off the track again, Verstappen could go with him. Race 1, our two leading cars were down in the mid-pack after turn 3.
I just got to say, if I'm Verstappen, I am compartmentalizing and cataloging everything I learned from that first race that he knows as good as anybody else. That could have been his race. Christoph Verstappen could have won that race. Towards Zidlo was shuffled out of the pack, and that could have been it. It wasn't it. By the way, I picked Towards Zidlo to win that race. That's not exactly what I had in mind, but absolutely incredible drive. Folks, if you want to share sim racing with a loved one, with a family member, get them involved. That might be the race. Because if you tell them at the end of lap 1, that car in 6th place is going to win this race, they wouldn't believe you. It's just incredible stuff. By the way, Wolf Matushka in chat. Hello, Wolf, making fun of me. I'm very hyper today. I'm just excited to be back with Tim Peck and Jake Boswell back on GT4. It is genuinely some of the most exciting racing that I think we do here at RCI, and I think it has something to do with the cars that have less power and less grip, and also when you throw about 50 of them on a racetrack, crazy stuff happens.
Completely forgot we had so many cars on the track, and it all snaps together now thinking about how many fights there were constantly, but it's definitely made this racing so close, and as you can see, anything can happen. Just going to take you back, Jesse Lee, to the first time you were here with me in this booth talking about the GT4s. One of the first things you said to me was, I don't know a lot about these cars, so I'm not 100% sure what's going to happen here. Well, if you were ever like Jesse, this is what happens here with the GT4s. Every single season and nearly every single race, we go from, yeah, this could go all right, it'll be a bit interesting, to literally screaming at the top of our lungs with excitement because they always bring out some incredible racing. And now, well, we're about to see what happens again. 2 minutes until the race to start, and I've got to say it, those cars look so intimidating and they all look ready to fight. I can't wait to find out what happens between this top three.
Well, you will have your race one winner and current championship leader towards Zidlow leading Verstappen. They went side by side into turn 1, 2, and 3, and 4, actually, now that I think about it. And so did your second row of Boardman and de Havilland. Of course, it didn't end very well. We didn't actually get time to talk about the 57 Chevrolet. De Havilland probably going to have a sizable penalty for what happened between him and Kazamirski. You cannot realistically think that anyone's going to get away with that. It's hard to tell, and it would be almost impossible to prove if that was intentional or not, but rather beside the point, whether it was retaliation or not, it was a sort of a bump and run, if you will. Even if he didn't get the place from him, that looked pretty bad. It was a black eye moment for the 57.
They will have to wait to find out the verdict of that. Of course, we've mentioned a couple of times now that race stewarding is post-race. And I think the stewards are probably sitting there thinking, thank God for that, after the chaos we have watched. It's just, there is so much happening. So, it all happens post-race. And, I mean, I can barely keep up, Jesse. Until you mentioned there about the incident between car number 50 and 57, I'd completely forgotten that had happened. I'm just also thinking that 57 also got tangled up with someone else later on, where they ended up just shunting them that little bit hard as they had a different braking point in the corner. But so much happened in that last race, and I think it's just safe to say we all need a bit of time to absorb what happened there properly, as we now will begin the outlap for race 2. Got to spend about 2-3 minutes getting around that track, Jesse. But once they're at that line, I feel like it's going to be even more hectic than what we just saw in race 1.
Towards Zidlow, absolutely redeemed from the early lap 1, we'll call it bump and run that occurred, was able to get all that position back. And if I'm Andy Boardman, you have to believe they have to redeem themselves. And what about Christoph Verstappen? It was so close. It was tangible. It was real. He could have had it. He didn't have it. What does he do differently this time to take the win? Reading chat, as we always are here. A couple of people loving the racing so far. Nate saying that picking the Alpine was a mistake. And Miguel Martin saying that his tires were dead after 10 minutes. They don't know how they did an hour a season ago. And yeah, we could definitely tell, Miguel, that some of the cars were using up the tires. Matthew Kingston Lee basically putting on a drift exhibition and somehow still making lap time.
I just thinking back to that massive drift that Kingston Lee did, basically around the side of Vasiliev, I believe it was at the time. Absolutely insane. But if there's one thing that Porsche is going to be looking to do in this race differently, I think they will be just looking to preserve their tyre that little bit longer. All it has to last is 20 minutes, but a lot of the cars were starting to really lose their tyre here, and it is hard at Misano. There's a lot of those fast sweeping corners that just absolutely destroy those tyres, but it has to be done. As we now see them, they've got a couple more straights and a couple more corners to do before they get to that line. But they look ever so menacing. All 42 cars that we have with us right now coming through on the outlap. I mean, just look at that sight, Jesse.
Jeez, that is so many cars. Of course, post-race, we'll tell you a little bit more about our partners, Race Department, AK Informatica, Driver 61, Fanatec, and SimRacing.gp, but more about them after race 2. And race 2, the same as race 1, qualifying set the order for both races. 20 minutes, no pit stop, all the teams, all the drivers rather, are racing in their class, which means Zidlo is on pole for his class and Ellis on pole for his. Could it be a repeat of one race ago, or will it be different? How many will they go down into turn one side by side? They were 2 rows deep. Could it be more this time? Can Verstappen get the better of them? Can Boardman get another excellent run to the lead? We are about to find out. Tim Peck, take us away.
I think Verstappen is going to be very eager to get their foot down as early as possible here as we slowly but surely approach that start-finish line. And here they go. They are off very quickly this time. You can see the difference. And it looks like Torzillo is going to push Verstappen to the side of the corner this time. Verstappen not having the advantage that they had last time they came through here. And honestly, this is a bit unexpected. Very textbook from the front row here as they all just slot nicely into the positions that they started in. The car's gone a little bit wide there, but we'll just manage to slot in. I believe that was the 57 Chevrolet. But Torzillo has managed to hold it together a lot better this time through the first corners, and they have already got that tiny little gap to Verstappen. It's not huge, but it's just enough that they're not in immediate danger. Something clearly happened in the mid-pack though, because we've got a car yellow flagged at the side of the road. I believe there's another one there as well. They're probably, it looks like one returned to the pits. There's 2 more at the side of the road currently and 1 lagging behind. So something happened in the mid-pack there, which I'm not surprised about. I caught a slight glimpse of them coming through that first corner, and I'd say, Jesse, there are probably about 10 cars all trying to make that chicane at the same time.
Adalbert Ertan trying to defend against Kingston Lee and Klosowski, all fighting over that spot. I can tell you that the likes of Lowe in the lower class have been involved in some sort of accident as they've dropped a few positions. Ellis, Watton, and Sumanen are the top 3 in the lower class. Meanwhile, Kingston Lee picking up right where he left off, trying to go around the outside. Still hasn't made that work, but I remain resolute that if anybody here is going to get that to work, it's probably going to be Matthew Kingston Lee. Zidlo does make up for his race 1 accident. He gets away cleanly this time and has more than a 1-second lead and leads the very first lap. Verstappen and Boardman, the top 2. De Havilland did take Boardman on the initial start, but de Havilland has fallen back a couple of spots. Boardman back to 3rd, Kazimierski up to 4th, and beyond that, Jackson Ertan, Klosowski, Kingston Lee, the 68 Chevrolet, the second Chevrolet we have, round out the top 10, and you've got Billy Octane just behind them. Phil Roberts, I was told in the break, Tim, that there was contact between Octane and Roberts. I think those are supposed to be teammates.
Well, we've seen it happen time and time again. It always seems to be Octane and Roberts that are fighting each other despite being teammates, and we're going to watch it happen again now. So hopefully for Roberts it's not a repeat, because I believe they fell through the pack quite dramatically last race as well. But Octane manages to keep it together. They are currently sitting very comfortably in the middle of the track, although Roberts looks like they're going to now look for a bit of the inside, and maybe they've got it through here. They're neck and neck, it seems, as they come onto the straight, and I believe that Roberts might have the advantage, although it looks like Octane is going to be able to make it ahead just before that kinking the road, and that is what is critical. If we've learned anything from last race, is that you want to be ahead before the kink, as now we're going to watch the fight for, is this the fight for 3rd place? It is. Boardman now holding off the number 15 BMW and the 57 Chevrolet right behind. Jesse Lee, correct me if I'm wrong, is this not exactly what race 1 looked like, but just a couple of positions further up?
Oh dear, both of these drivers are going to have some explaining to do post-race, but could they add a little bit more to the sheet? I don't know. Boardman trying to defending successfully against Kazimierski, and de Havilland here waiting in the wings for an opportunity. Keep in mind, de Havilland executed that strategy perfectly 1 race ago. All it's going to take is a little side-by-side action, not even contact between the 69 and the 15, and that could lead de Havilland and the 57 to gaining a couple of spots as well and getting back onto that podium. So you got to race this smart. Oh, defending
Oh!
all the way to the left side of the track is Boardman. Boardman not trying to get beat down the straightaway. He doesn't have much of a choice in the little Alpine as Kazimierski all over him, but can't quite get it done. The turning ability of the Alpine bails out the fact that there's absolutely no top speed on that 69, but for a second there, that was very close. Super defensive driving and excellent driving by Andy Boardman.
Some excellent defending there from Boardman just to be able to hold on to that position against the BMW, which we can now see yet again just powering their way down the straight. The Alpine trying to hold as best it can on the inside, and it looks like the BMW has now fought their way through here, but the Alpine is still in it, still on the inside, and still in third place, Jesse Lee. Boardman is fighting for his life here in that little car, and you can just see the power that the BMW holds against it in the straight, but the Alpine manages to hold it together long enough to get it to those critical set of tight corners where it can just force itself back up into the position. Boardman with some absolutely amazing defending, and Kazimierski with some brilliant reactions as well, because I tell you what, with the defending coming out of Boardman there, Kazimierski must have been so tuned in to react that quickly without an accident happening.
Harry Conway in chat commenting on a couple of his cars that are in this race, talking about multi-21 between Billy Octane and Phil Roberts. I don't think that's going to happen, Harry. I hate to tell you that, but I think they're going to race this out for better or for worse. Meanwhile, Neil Pimlott trying to get by Phil Roberts as Billy Octane has walked away just a little bit from this fight. Neil Pimlott pretty much stayed where Neil started in race one, which if he knew what happened behind him and in front of him, you might call that a win after one race.
It certainly would have been a win just to stay where you are, basically. There's so much chaos, and I will say this has been a lot more calmer this time around. We have had a couple of accidents already, but for the most part, everyone has just toned it down that little bit to make sure that they don't go full glass cannon into a corner and end up throwing away their own race in the process. Looking though now, we've got Klazowski. He is fighting to try and get themselves up into 8th currently. It's confusing because they're the number 8 car and they want to be in 8th, but the Porsche not managing to make the move around the outside. We've seen it time and time again happen. And Jesse, Kingston Lee clearly went for it again, has fallen back to 13th. I'm not sure what happened there, but if I had to put money on it, I'd say went for a move around the outside and lost grip with the tyres.
Absolutely did. Getting swamped now is Phil Roberts. Neil Pimlott getting the 11th place position away. I thought that Phil was going to go for a little bit of a ride there over the baguette curbs. Doesn't, in fact, and in fact now goes back on the offensive around the outside, or will it be trying the crossover here, trying to be anywhere Neil Pimlott isn't, and almost got a nose in there and at least kept Kingston Lee at bay for another half of a lap. I don't know if Phil Roberts saw what Matthew Kingston Lee was doing in that first race, but he's about to find out at the end of this lap just exactly what that 555 is willing to do to make a move work. But space between them now as Neil Pimlott pulls away. Phil Roberts continuing, but getting run down by Kingston Lee. Kingston Lee looking down the inside. Phil Roberts knows he's there, but can't quite pull it off. Too acute of an angle. Gets a bad exit, does Phil Roberts. And there goes Kingston Lee through the gap. Next person on their list, Neil Pimlott, as Kingston Lee finally gets one of those passes done. Didn't even have to slide to do it.
Certainly didn't have to slide to do it, but for a second there, thought they weren't quite going to make it, but of course Roberts went just a little too wide. The Ginetta, which clearly a very popular choice in this championship, hasn't quite been shown its strength yet, but I will admit Misano is not the place the Ginetta usually benefits. Later on the season though, a couple of races, Monza in particular, I have heard reports the Ginetta quite fancies, so those guys in the Ginetta right now will be looking to strike back a little bit later on the season, but we're going to watch what happened here between Jackson and the car ahead.
Ooh.
It looks like Jackson lost a little bit of grip. Maybe the car behind went, yeah, I think Vasiliev went through that corner.
As contact for Jake Boswell,
I think they just lost a bit of grip. I'm not sure there was contact there. They just lost that grip, but Vasiliev, having had Kingston Lee attempt to do it to them, several times in race 1, decides they fancy their chances on the outside and does it in the true Kingston style of a skid with a catch at the end. As actually Martins now is looking for the inside of the McLaren himself. Looks like they've got the inside well and has forced the McLaren out wide there. Martins in the Audi, showing them all how it's done. That's how you overtake on this track, Jesse Lee.
It wasn't Miguel Martins just complaining about not having tires 10 minutes in. Looks like he has tires now as he makes that pass for 15th place. And I got to tell you something, folks. Even if you're not in the top 10 in your class, 15th feels like a top 10 compared to being in 16th place. If you're in the top 15, you get to say I'm in the top 15. And there's just something special about those nice numbers. I won't call them round numbers because clearly they're not as such. But you get my point. And for Jamie Ellis, it is business as usual in the lower class. They won handily the first race, and they are cruising here in between a couple of the pro class cars. Suominen here has driven all the way up to second place. Just an excellent drive from Mishka in the 84, and a brilliant drive as well for Simon Watton in the 56, who has had a quiet day compared to a lot of the guys that they're racing with in that class up at the sharp end of it. And just an excellent job by them. DeBont is in fourth place, some ways away, and pretty much everybody else in that class has had some sort of issue, it looks like. You know who hasn't had an issue? Towards Zidlow in the Carbon Sim Sports Porsche. Absolutely cruising. 4.5 seconds.
4.5 seconds. I was going to say someone who's having a quiet day at the moment is towards Zidlow, but someone who's not having a quiet day is Verstappen in second place. Boardman has managed to close that gap yet again. It did get a bit big for a second, but the Alpine has started to show its strength through these corners here. So Boardman is now looking towards second place. They're going to want to snap up as many points as possible after falling back in race 1. But that doesn't mean there aren't cars behind. The number 15 BMW and de Havilland in the Chevrolet are also ready to snap up that podium at any point in time. And if it's anything we've seen today, it's just these three. It seems to have been Alpine, BMW, Chevrolet constantly on the screen, and they have constantly been fighting for those podium positions. So we will see who is going to come out on top here. The BMW definitely fallen back a bit, not so aggressive on the Alpine anymore. I'm wondering, Jesse Lee, are they just abiding their time until they can make it through? Oh, actually, it looks like they've just been spun out by the Chevrolet there. Not how the BMW would have wanted to go there.
Oh my goodness, another spin, and all the way back to 9th is Arter in the 15 BMW, and it's getting a bit silly now, Tim.
It's not ideal, is it? But you know, it happens in these races. There's moments when you be aggressive. There's moments, I think, where you realise where you can be aggressive and when you have to tone it back a bit. Obviously, when you're sim racing with other people, it's hard to begin with. You're not just hot lapping, you have to know where they are around you in what space. And when you're racing with 40 other cars with you on the grid, you really have to find that space. So I imagine the big learning point today for that number 57 is going to be, okay, where can I and can I not be aggressive, and where do I need to put a bit more braking into it? Because I'd say 90% of the things we've seen so far has just been a case of missing a braking point and accidentally tapping the car ahead. Someone who's not missing a braking point is the car that's just taken Ellis here. It looks like they managed to do a safe overtake and Ellis has just gone wide, but we are going to watch what happened here. It's Tom Bryant going on Ellis, actually catches the car in the rear there, sending the Porsche off the track. Chief Steward Tom Bryant might have a bit of influence over the penalty he gets there.
He's definitely not going to have any influence, and that will be a colossal bollocking from everybody else at RCI. There's, quite frankly, no sense in that. And Tom knows that, and he's going to have to take that on the chin. Or how do the British people say it? Time to look at shoes, I think, is going to be post-race for Tom Bryant.
I cannot wait to read the staff chat tonight. He is going to get grilled for that move that he tried to pull
Sure
there.
is.
I cannot wait to see the fallout from it. And Tom Bryant, very honest guy, probably already accepted that he was absolutely in the wrong there. Pretty hard not to. But looking back at more Porsches, we've seen a lot of them in this race, and you're going to see a lot more as the number, is that 84? The number 84 is just trying to hold off 56, Watton behind. It looks like Watton may be looking for a move here, but we will see what happens. The car is currently not able to find the move onto the inside yet. It looks like the 84 is just holding on to it, but there's plenty more time in this race. 5 minutes, which is basically a quarter of the race still, Jesse. It feels weird to say. 5 minutes left in this race to do something. Do you think people are going to start getting desperate now, or do you think the big rush is going to start happening a little bit closer to the finish?
Do you know, it's interesting you mentioned that. I feel like this race has been a ton calmer than race number 1, and it always seemed that way as looked like, was that Watton fighting Bozak in the background? I think that is the case. That's Bozak in the 49 Ginetta trying to get around the 56 of Watton, and I think it's just going to about get it done. Nope, got side by side, had to fall back in line there. But to your point, Tim, 2 seasons ago when we did this format for the final time, or the time before this anyway, I always felt like one race was fairly calm and one race was incredibly chaotic, and there was no consensus. It wasn't always race 1 or 2. It was a pretty good mix of the two. I think race 1 was absolutely insane. This race has been quite a bit more calm. But to answer your question, yes, the wick's going to get turned up here, and there's going to be some ill-advised maneuvers because of how close some of these cars are. Mind you, something else has happened in the last few laps I've been keeping an eye on. Towards Zidlow is hemorrhaging time to Verstappen. That sector alone, 4/10 quicker was Verstappen on the leader. So keep an eye on that. Keep an eye on this. Billy Octane getting attacked, actually attacking Neil Pimlott. Done and dusted. Billy Octane up inside the top 10. I said done and dusted, but don't count out Pimlott around the outside. Could it be magic around this hard left-hander? No, it will not. And Octane takes that spot. Top 10. Oh, is it going to be crossover? It is a crossover again, but on the wrong side is Pimlott. Covering the inside is Octane. And Pimlott's going to send it in there. Does he have enough overlap? Almost, just about, but almost doesn't count unless we're playing horseshoes and hand grenades. And this is motorsport. Billy Octane, top 10.
Billy Octane holding on for dear life to this top 10 position. Pimlott is still hot on Octane's heels here. So this fight is definitely not over. Kingston Lee, someone who we have seen make several attempts around the outside here, is also just approaching this fight for themselves now. Will Kingston Lee be able to shake this up a bit, or will Octane be able to hold on to that 10th place? We will be finding out as we close the race. Now we've only got 2 minutes and 30 seconds left to find out how this is going to wrap up. The 68 Chevrolet has just pulled into the pits for a drive-through that they've picked up. We would also like to remind everyone that there is no live stewarding for this race, so that drive-through penalty will have been given by the game for track limits a lot later on this time than it was in the first race. Don't think it was the same driver at all. I believe it wasn't the 68 before, but the drive-through, we usually see about one a race for those track limits, and it has finally struck with just 2 minutes left. That's got to hurt for Fwerk.
Yeah, that's absolutely going to hurt. And also, too, of course, they did so well that you hate that. They almost had a complete day. And what are the newer names that we talked about? Well, actually, you talked about getting to know some of these newer drivers. The 68 for me was certainly on that list. They did a pretty darn good job in race 1. It's just not going to come off here in race 2. Klosowski here all alone basically now in the number 8 for the moment, getting chased by Kazimierski. But Billy Octane, who has taken, well, what is 9th place because of the drive-through penalty, has not been able to shake Neil Pimlott. And just want to address what Crope said in chat earlier, mentioning that they love this kind of racing. It reminds them of the old touring car racing where you'd have big American cars and nimble European cars all racing on the same track at the same time. It was chaotic, but it was beautiful. And I absolutely agree. with that statement. I think that's what I like about this because you've got, even though they're GT4s, they all handle very differently. They drive very differently, and the characteristics are very different indeed. And I think it makes for some brilliant racing. Case and point. Ian Marshall trying to go the long way here on the 303 and can't quite get it done. Oh, car off in the background. I think that's going to be the 666, maybe? It is the 666 off in the background, but position surrendered for Marshall there as Hunt gets through again.
Hunt has just made that look really easy. I'm wondering if Marshall was struggling a little bit for grip, and that's why they went very wide in that corner just to ensure it. I think a lot of cars are really starting to feel that now. As I'm just looking at that top five, which once upon a time was all within basically 1 second of each other, have now split up massively, and there's big gaps with like of 2 seconds between each. Verstappen, by the way, has absolutely closed that gap towards the low ahead, but it's most likely too little too late. Verstappen has done an amazing job just putting in these most recent laps. However, not going to be able to catch up with towards low in time, but for the most part, it looks like towards low will be leading this race unless he spins out at the end, which isn't likely. But Octane's still fighting, Bozok is still fighting as they look for their way through the cars ahead, and Daly here as well, also still fighting as they try to hold off Watton behind. So there's a lot of action still left to happen on the track and only one lap to do it. Will any of these cars be able to climb positions, or will there be just a normal finish as we see Torzillo come across the line with a 2.3 second gap to Verstappen behind? This, Jesse, was the race that you were looking for from Torzillo. Start to finish, textbook driving, just put in those hot laps, and that is what Torzillo is going to be very happy to have. Verstappen will once again come in second place, and Boardman...
Oh, look at this!
Oh, what's happening here?
Kingston Lee got by Neil Pimlotter, did he? No, he didn't at the line. They were absolutely side by side. Kingston Lee was off of the racetrack, and Jordan Daly, by the way, is going to get that spot and finish in 17th spot. So a last lap pass there for Jordan Daly, getting that done. Jamie Ellis goes 2 for 2 as well in wins and AM. Suminen, absolute deserved second place in the lower class, and Watton with third. Ricciardo and Yaroshenko round out the top 5 in that class. There are going to be a lot of storylines that come out of week 1. You're going to want to be with us next week, and we will dissect all of what happened this week. Of course, in all likelihood, massive penalties for some drivers. Torzillo, though, goes 2 for 2 in 2 completely different ways, and I believe we're witnessing a Carbon Sim Sports photo op happen right here on the cooldown lap.
This is a camera lap, it seems. They are just showing off that livery. All 3 cars looking exactly the same there, and can I just say, all 3 cars did exceptionally well. I don't believe I've seen Jackson or Klazowski in the races before. If I have, I'm truly sorry, but you guys all did brilliantly in those Porsches, matching those colours. Torzillo, of course, has won both races. Absolutely phenomenal race from the Carbon Motorsport team there, and they are going to be very happy with that result, I imagine. Verstappen kicking themselves a little bit maybe for that first race and how that first lap turned out, but certainly had a great opening to this championship, and Boardman as well, managing to finally find that podium in the second race. I'd say for that second race, that top 3 definitely all had a fairly good day today.
I'm going to say this about Andy Boardman real quick. They needed to avenge the race 1 incident, the self-inflicted incident, admittedly, and I think they did that with a podium here. And of course, that stopped the bleeding for the championship. Boardman, by virtue of getting a good result here in this race and the little bit of a recovery drive they had, getting some spots back in race 1, Boardman still in it here. Still within what I would refer to as striking distance. But the man of the day, Torzillo, going 2 for 2 in 2 completely different ways. Had to fight back in race 1. Race 2 led flag to flag. Brilliant stuff. Jamie Ellis just doing an excellent job as well. 2 races in a row. It's going to be a crazy championship.
It is indeed, and those drivers both Todd Zidlow and Jamie Ellis are going to be very happy with the points lead they've got. We will show you how it's turned out next week when we'll be able to see the scoreboards. But I can tell you one thing, Jessie, Todd Zidlow not only won both races, not only qualified on pole, but also had the fastest lap in both races as well. Of course, you get extra points for all of those things. He is going to have a very comfortable cushion of points there to help hold off Verstappen and Boardman for the rest of this championship.
Yes, indeed. And of course, we would like to thank our partners that make this race and every race possible. RaceDepartment.com, your source of sim racing news and mods, AK Informatica, for providing our server solutions. And of course, Driver61.com. Did you know you can get 25% off your driver coaching by using our discount code at Driver61.com? Driver coaching can make you a faster driver, and in fact, it has done for several of the staff here at RCI, including one Mr. Mike Jones, who I entered a race with this earlier this year, and we got a trophy. So I'll give him full points for that. And Driver 61, thank you very much for playing a role in that. Fanatec, fanatec.com, for your quality sim racing wheels, pedals, peripherals. And of course, you can use our affiliate link there. It doesn't cost you anything. And using our affiliate link can help us with things like server cost. And simracing.gp, if you're tired of the pub lobby scene, simracing.gp, join a community, get racing today. It's completely free and it's organized for you all at simracing.gp. Well, beyond today's race, I am so happy that we're back next week. Tim Peck, by the way, for those of you at home, he's going to be taking over the lead commentating role. So he's going to be giving you the spiel next week, and he's going to be asking me the questions. Kristen Stricker will be back with us in 1 week's time to help clear up everything that happened today. For Friday, of course, we'll be back with you, myself, Mike Jones, and Stewie for the third round of the Friday GT3 Championship. And of course, myself, and I'm not sure who I'm actually with for Night Out this week. I don't know if it's Ryan Mawson or Mike Jones, but it might be actually Nate, as far as I know. But either way, Night Out race number 3 coming at you in 2 nights' time. Monday, Euro Masters returns with the Ryan and Ryan show for round 3 of the Euro Masters Cup, and the Diamond Drive Cup starts up this coming Wednesday. Myself, Nate, and Jake Boswell bringing you the call of that. And of course, in 1 week's time, we'll be right back here with you. Tim Peck, a lot to sort through. I'm glad we have a week to get around to it. All I know is good to be back.
It's very good to be back, and I'm glad we have a week too. Mark down those Thursdays on your calendars. We have 4 more rounds of racing after this, and next week we are heading to Monza. So we will be staying in Italy, and I tell you what, I can't predict the future, but if there's one thing I know about Monza, it's that it's that much more chaotic than Misano. So don't go anywhere, because we will be back and we will be bringing all of the racing with us.
Heard, by the way, just at the buzzer here, that Jordan Daly broke his wheel and drove up to 17th place from 42nd, I believe it was. So what a hell of a drive it was for Jordan Daly. And wow, just what a day it was here. Folks, that's going to be just about it from us tonight. We'll be back with you tomorrow night, myself, Mike Jones, and we will see you then. Until next time, though, have a good night.